Thank you for listening to Intuition Your First Sense. This is Vicki Baird, and I am a professional coach and an intuitive development teacher. And I absolutely love this podcasting gig that's going on right now. It's been a blast for me to be part of your world and to hear how it's helping you and to see the numbers creep up all across the world. Actually, it's getting some pretty good reviews in Denmark and Japan, which, how fantastic is that, to be able to stand here in my dining room, living room, open plan concept condo in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and be connecting with people all over the world. It's absolutely a pleasure for me. And this is the 75th episode, which means that this is the end of season 3, because I've been doing them in 25 show blocks. Some of that is to keep track, and some of it is to be able to, just have this wrap-up show at the end of a season and to cover briefly some of the subjects that we've gone over, and then to give you a little idea of what's coming up. And as always, if you have suggestions for shows, or if there's a subject that you'd like to learn about that I haven't covered that I'm capable of covering, or getting some guests on that can talk about it, I'd be happy to do that as well. So stick around. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the rest of the energy for August and how we can, best prepare ourselves for the coming months. Hi, Vicki again. Did you know that I have a group that meets one Wednesday of the month? That's the last Wednesday of the month, and it's called Wisdom Wednesday. And the reason it's called Wisdom Wednesday is because we are all incredibly intelligent, and this is the place where we combine intuition, education, common sense, coaching, all into one practice, and then I lead you out with a guided meditation. And it's an investment of $8 a month. It is a membership, and it will allow you to learn how to develop your own intuition and to be part of a community that supports you while you do. So go head on over to vickibaird.com/courses and sign up. Thanks for sticking around. I say that almost every show. It's been pretty fun to go through this process and to hear what one-liners are coming up. I don't plan them, but that stick around, or some of the other ones, see you in the next show, even though I'm not technically seeing you, although coming up in the next season, I've just ordered and received my camera equipment so that this can become a visual aspect too, because some people are asking for that. The podcast gets sent to YouTube, and it's been sent there as an audio file, and it's just fantastic that this is all possible in this day and age. And yet people are asking for the video component to it. So, because if you've watched any of my videos or taken any of my classes, I'm pretty expressive. I could never play poker, because although I can hold in a session a really professional space, and you actually can't tell where I'm going or thinking or anything like that, because in consulting you have to be able to do that, right? You have to be able to have a professional face. And yet when I'm doing the podcast, or I'm teaching a live class, or leading a workshop, I get so excited about what's going on for the people taking it, and my energy interaction with you, that I do tend to make some, I like to think, comical faces. And then people have said it helps them to process the information a little bit better. And then I think it's also about connection, because we're doing so much remotely now due to COVID, that I know I follow quite a few people on YouTube, and I feel like I'm part of their life because I get to see, maybe the background of their space of where they're recording. And we need to be mindful of that. For anybody's listening to this, if you're doing a show, can you please look behind you? Because I just watched one recording the other day, and this is part of the consulting thing that comes up for me. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, people who are getting their podcasts up and running, or who are teaching now and leading workshops. And one of the things that I think is important, and it doesn't have to be set up for every stinking scene, but if you're doing a show or you're leading a workshop, you do need to look behind you. You need to be aware of what's in your environment. There's some great green screens out there. You can set yourself up with just a lovely tapestry behind you, or even sitting in your chair with a great piece of art behind you. But you have to be mindful of that stuff. And this is not only what I've been consulting on with some of the businesses, but also what I do myself. The combination of my space and, maybe there will be a walk around at one point where those listening on podcasts would actually have to go to YouTube to see it. But this is part of what's coming up in the next season because of the feedback from what you've experienced and how you're giving your reviews and everything. And I so appreciate that. So it's important to look at our environment. This includes what's in there physically and then what's in there energetically. So over these last 25 shows, I've talked and received emails back about how our frequency, we talked about the frequency that we emit and that we are a vibration and how that impacts what's going on around us. Well, that also means what do you have in your space? Do you have a lot of clutter behind you? And since I'm such a visual person, I know when I'm watching some of these videos, I can totally lose what the person's saying because I'm thinking, wow, those are a lot of papers and files and folders, and that's a lot of clutter that you have on that kitchen counter or behind you on the bookshelf. And I just think it's important for us to pay attention to our surroundings. That includes what we're watching on TV, what we're listening to in podcast land, and what conversations we're engaging in. So part of this season also, I talked to a couple people like Cody Edner and Mike McCallowicks, and I'll have more interviews going on in the next segment. It was a little challenging because everybody was recalibrating their work front, and although mine didn't shift very much because I had already set myself up as virtual, I wanted to be respectful of the interviews I had set up for this season and not overwhelm people for the sake of a podcast. So those got pushed out to the next season. So I'll be having some people on to bring, about some subject matter that I might know about, but, people have become experts in. So we'll be back in the fitness world and how we can continue to stay inspired. I'll have a doctor of osteopathy coming on. I have a few others that are set up in the more practical level of how are they, in a business setting, incorporating their intuition into it, where, perhaps they hadn't before. Maybe they were all in go mode, and this experience of looking at how their clients are impacted or how they had to change and shift their business is some of the subjects that we'll be having. So along those lines, I had done the show, the episode that came out in June about that time I effed up my business, because transparency is important. And that's one of the things that I feel like brings us together, is being able to say, I've experienced this. let me save you some steps, and maybe you wouldn't have done some of the stuff I did or what other businesses have gone through. But if you're not flexible in your own life, but most especially, I think this time has shown us, if you're not flexible in your own business, there will be significant consequences about it. So I'll share some more of the people have asked for my process to understand how how I arrived and where I am now. I certainly don't believe that I'm at the epitome of Vicky. That's a constant, ongoing, eternal process. But people have asked about that, and I'm happy to share that. Like most people, I've been wandering around with me for 51 years, so I don't find it all that interesting. But I've collected a list of questions that people have asked me or said that they want to hear me talk about, and I'm happy to do that. I am an open book, as is evident by the abuse show and me sharing my past, because I think that again helps us to connect and to realize we're not alone in our experiences. We won't have exactly the same experience, but that empathic nature is what separates us, which allows us to evolve and to grow as humans. And we could really use a little bit more of it right now, as well as I think it's important to realize that there is no such thing as perfection. We are never going to arrive there. So we can strive, we can grow, we can expand. In the empathy we have for others, perhaps we can have some for ourselves and realize that, yeah, I am a work in process, and sometimes it's dang funny. So the energy updates, I'll continue to do those each month to help you navigate a little bit. This month of August has had its definite challenges, but you know what? It's felt so much more relaxed than July. Now, I understand that people are stressed about going back to school and navigating that, and what the heck does that mean? And I'm not in that position of having to decide for my kids, and I do know the stress because I consult with quite a few people who are in that position. And I would ask that we have a little bit of compassion for our administrators who have not navigated this place either. You can have protocols, you can write up policies and procedures, and you can have a perception of how you'll handle a situation. And it's still got so many moving parts and so stressful. And I would ask that we have a little bit of compassion for those that are in the position of having to make some decisions that not only impact their family, but go out and impact potentially thousands of families. And, that's a lot to carry. And I feel like sometimes we as a society think that our administrators or even our leaders in our government and in our towns and our cities, that they're not people as well, that there's some kind of machine or robot or something. One of the things that I do when I get on my own, well, I would do this, or I think they should do this kind of place, is I remind myself, I didn't run for that office. I didn't sign up for that position. It's really easy on the outside to say how you would do things. But when you're faced with the pressure and the intensity and the unknowingness of all of this, that is a lot. And I think empathy can go a long way here. That doesn't mean that we have to be okay with mediocrity, or that we have to just kind of float along with the ambiguity. We do need to hold accountable. But you know what? Can we remember that they're people and that they have hearts and emotions and souls as well? And I truly believe that the majority of people are doing the best they can with what they have at the time, and they're learning too. And I just feel like that would go a long way to relieving your stress too. Because if you hold an anger or a frustration, that's within you. Even if you're spouting off, you know what? That vibration is operating within your body. And you may want to look at that and see if it's worth it. And of course, anger and frustration are valid emotions. But I don't know about you. I don't want them bouncing around inside me and creating discord or, a dis-ease process. So August has been a little bit lighter in the universal intensity, even while it's had its stressors. And boy, is it pushing on the continuation of what I've been talking about, of releasing the old hurts, the anger, the old patterns of the way that we operate in the world. And it's going to continue to do this. September, October, November, they are all a continuation of this experience. So the more you realize when you get in that kind of cramped up place or frustrated place, if you can say to yourself, wait a minute, this is that old pattern that wants to leave. How can I help it go? I just had this experience yesterday, and I am actually recording this a day before the podcast goes out. So it's very pertinent, in which I felt a resistance to allow some really great stuff to come into my life. And I pushed away what was a fantastic opportunity. Luckily, the people didn't realize that I was pushing. I felt it within myself. And I, within an hour, turned around, connected with him again, and said, I'm so sorry. I had a little bit of a reaction there of blocking what is in my highest intention, and kind of wrestled with my own deserving of joy, of abundance, of love in my life. And while the receiving party didn't really notice it, I did, and I wasn't gracious in what they were offering me. I had manners, but it was a pretty big deal. So for the ability to know that this energy is present, and to within half an hour, I was like, oh man, I did it again. Okay, well, I did it again. And I know that this energy is here to release that, and one of my challenges has always been about receiving help and not being so stinking stubborn about it because of, my own need to be independent growing up. So to be able to acknowledge it within half an hour, shift the energy, and then be willing to have the courageous conversations, because it wasn't something that was so evident, like I said, to the other person. So I could have just skated on by that. But my ethical line wouldn't let me. My own commitment to myself to continue growing and to not be a hypocrite and ask this of you, but not do it myself. So it's still a little uncomfortable. These things don't completely, magic wand shift. However, I obviously lived through the experience of being able to say, you were offering me something that I'm not used to. Thank you so much for the acknowledgement, for the gift, and for being willing to hear that I got scared. Bottom line, I got scared. And that's okay. So this August energy, September, October, November, is going to be presenting these opportunities. I've been saying that word all along with this shift in consciousness that we're having, and then the process through the coronavirus and school and elections, everything. So it's going to ask you to look at your relationships, and are you codependent? Which did make me chuckle a little bit, because I feel like I'm so the opposite of the definition of codependent that I'm like, you swung all the way around the dial, Vic. You went from being so independent that the idea of codependency doesn't even come up on your radar. And so therefore collaboration doesn't either. So, we can swing too far. And, I hope you can hear in my voice that there has to be humor around this stuff. We have to stop taking ourselves so seriously and realizing that, we really are learning as we go. So August is going to help with that. And it's going to ask you, can you make your own decisions? Are you relying on other people's opinions too much? I love what's going on in the conversation, rather, that's going on around the schools systems and whether parents send their kids back or not, because there's some messages being said that you do for your kid, I'll do for my kid. That is brilliant, because that is where independence happens, and that's where we get to say, I respect you. I'm holding a place of respect for myself. You don't have to like it, but it's like the expanded version of you do you, I'll do me. So in this expansion through September, October, November, if this appreciation of the process can be on board, you will fight with your inner inner critic less. And if you use the energy that's here and supporting us, people talk about blocks all the time. I'm like, well, what about the energy that's at your back, gently encouraging you to move forward? Not everything is a block. Maybe you're digging your heels in like I did, and you have to realize that that's no longer serving me. Plus, it's probably going to result in some more challenges and just not feel great. So the knowing yourself so well that you can hear others clearly and without judgment, you can be open to learning and expanding beyond where you have been and what thinking you have on board. And then you can counter that inner critic, and you can be kind to it by saying, I hear you, and I don't want to create or keep feeding the internal dialogue that's been going on. So part of the reason I created the Intuition 101 course in bite-sized pieces in the podcast is not only so that you can have it, but also, well, total transparency, I didn't get the class recorded in time, so I thought on film with all the downloads and the deadline that I had set for myself. So I thought, well, just give it away, put it on the podcast. And of course, there's more depth that you could go into in a class, but the Intuition 101 shows, which will be sprinkled throughout season 3, are there to help you further identify what wiring do you have, how are you using it, and is there a place in your life that you're not allowing the support of the universe to be there. And then some other subjects that I haven't even thought of, because a lot of the times such great information comes from me being in session with people and the ideas that happen. And it's so fun for me with people who listen to the podcast or who've taken classes, who are working with me in a coaching setting or in a business consulting way. They'll often say to me, write that down, that's a good podcast. And that's where the community exists, right? Because I can't sit here and come up with the subjects that you might find interesting, because there's a misconception that people who are intuitive read minds. We don't. We read energy. We don't read your thought process. So the more information, the more feedback I have of what people would like to learn, the more seasons I can do of this. And the other show that I'm going to do, and that one will be coming up fairly shortly, if not next week, I haven't decided yet, is the BS show. So there are a lot of teachings, and there are a lot of, I don't know, lines of thought that I have seen in the self-help world, in the intuition development world, and in life in general, that I feel like are doing people a disservice. And I'm not the end all be all. I get that. But I am pretty willing to say when something is complete BS. And I started a list about a month ago of the headlines I see or the suggestions that people do, things that just lead you down sometimes into a spiral. And a lot of the times these suggestions and are coming from people coming to me because someone else told them that. An example, and I'll go into this further in the show, was someone was actually told they had a curse on them. Come on. Anybody who's still using that is using manipulation, and I'm going to discuss a little bit more about that in the show, and how how you can wind into that thinking, and then the people who are saying that, they're just trying to get you to buy more and more sessions because they instill fear. I'm going to talk a little bit about the energy and how, like everything, there's some semblance of truth to it. There is no semblance of truth that someone else can place a curse on you. But this is the example, right? That's one of the examples of probably about, I think it's up to 12 now, things that I've heard over the time, and that I've been doing this 20 years. And I feel like if I can help somebody who maybe hasn't heard that in a session yet, and somebody lays down that line, and then they can say, I respectfully disagree with you, and I'm ending the call right now. If it helps one person, it'll be brilliant for me. I don't even have to know that it's helped. I'll just know that I put it out there, and perhaps it helped. So thank you ever so much, truly, for listening, for your feedback, for being part of this community, for creating the platform. This podcast actually posted in the top 200 in the United States for health and wellness, and while I don't follow the statistics probably as closely as I should, or I could, as closely as I could, should has the guilt all over it, no guilt here, as I could, I just trust this goes out to those who need to hear it. And if something comes of that, brilliant. Otherwise, I feel like this is the greatest gift I've given myself in a long time. And I'm so grateful to be able to do this, and the technology we have to be able to share it, and for your responses and your reviews. So having said that, I'm going to throw out a giveaway here. So if you would be so kind as to leave a review on whatever platform you listen to, be honest. I'm not asking you to, fluff my skirts or anything, but say what you feel about the show, screenshot that, and email it to info@vickibaird.com, info@vickibaird.com, and Tracy the Magnificent will keep track of all of the submissions for the next month, because people don't listen to this right away. And I know sometimes I'm binging right now Brene Brown's show, because I got a little behind being busy. So for the next month, she's going to keep track of that. And then I always have my granddaughter pull when we do these things, because she's has such a scrupulous process that she's so trustworthy in this, and I allow her to pull the show. And then I will be giving away a session with me. So get on there, give a review, screenshot it, send it to info@VickiBaird, and I will get in contact with you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I will see you at the next episode. Be well. Thank you for listening to Intuition, Your First Sense. As always, please like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening to it. Leave a review and take a minute to share it with a friend. You can find me all across social media at Coach Vicki Baird, and you can book a virtual session with me from wherever you are in the world at vickibaird.com/booking. That's VICKIBAIRD.com/booking. Thank you again, and see you on the next episode.